Rain dripped steadily off the brim of Officer Callum Ridge's hat. Each drop ticking like a second he couldn't get back. His K-9 Bishop stood rigid in the clearing, fixated on a moss-covered crib nestled where no crib should be, in the middle of the woods, 10 miles from the nearest house. The dog growled low, ears pinned back. Ridge raised his flashlight. The wooden bars were rotting, splintered, wrapped in ivy, but inside something moved, something impossibly small. His pulse thudded in his neck. He stepped closer, not knowing the second he looked inside his life, and the town's secrets were cracked wide open. The dispatch call came in just past midnight, buzzing through the radio static like a ghost whisper. Unidentified noise complaint, possible baby crying. Coordinates ping back to National Forest boundary off Devil's Hollow Road. Nearest residence is 5 miles. Proceed with caution. Officer Callum Ridge scratched his jaw, staring at the rain sliding down his windshield. The forest out that way had been quiet for years, ever since the lumber mill shut down. But a baby? Out there? Bishop stirred in the back seat. The German shepherd's ears pricked up, his dark eyes locked on the trees ahead, the way he did when something wasn't right. Callum hesitated, then keyed the mic. 10-4, Ridge and K-9 en route. The cruiser's tires crunched through gravel and mud, headlights cutting swaths of light between towering pines and curling mist. Callum killed the engine when they reached the old fire trail, just wide enough for a four-wheeler. They'd have to go the rest on foot. "Let's see what the hell this is," he muttered, clipping Bishop's harness. The dog took the lead, tugging ahead as if he already knew the way. Callum followed, the beam of his flashlight sweeping across trunks, ferns, damp underbrush. Then, from somewhere ahead, faint and sickeningly out of place, a baby's cry. Thin, wavering, real. Callum froze. Bishop growled low in his throat. They rounded a bend and entered a natural clearing, wild with tall grass and fog. At the center sat a wooden crib, weathered, out of time, like something out of an old horror film. Bishop barked once, sharp, urgent, and lunged forward, circling the crib but never touching it. The cry had stopped. Callum raised his flashlight, heart pounding. Inside, swaddled in what looked like a pale blue blanket, was a baby, tiny, still, its skin waxy white. He holstered his weapon and approached cautiously. "Jesus, who the hell left you out here?" he whispered, reaching in. But as his fingers brushed the blanket, the baby's eyes shot open. They were wrong. Too black. No whites. Just pools of something deep, something ancient. Callum flinched and jerked his hand back. The baby didn't move. It didn't blink. Bishop barked again, backing away, hackles raised. Suddenly, from behind the tree lean, a twig snapped. Callum spun, flashlight arcing across trees, catching movement, just a flicker. Something humanoid slipping out of sight. "Sheriff's Department," he called. "Show yourself." Silence. Then a second cry, not from the crib, from deeper in the woods. Another baby? No, not quite. Something pretending to be. Callum turned to grab the child, but the crib was empty. The blanket sat crumpled. The baby was gone. His skin turned ice. "Bishop, track!" he barked, drawing his gun again. The dog lunged into the woods, and Callum followed. Branches whipped at his face. Mud sucked at his boots. The forest pulsed with unease, alive in a way it hadn't been for years. They pushed deeper, the cries leading them in circles until, finally, they stumbled into a clearing that wasn't on any map. An old hunting cabin. Boarded windows. No path leading in or out. Bishop growled. Callum raised his flashlight. A rusted sign hung crookedly above the door. Wellington Family, 1952. He knew that name. Everyone in Ashburn did. The Wellingtons had vanished 70 years ago. Parents, infant son, and 2 teenage daughters. No bodies ever found. Callum's breath caught. He didn't want to go inside, but he had to. He holstered his flashlight and slowly pushed open the door. Dust and rot assaulted his senses. The cabin interior was almost untouched. Kitchen table still set, mold-covered dishes in place, as if the family had simply gotten up and left, except for the drawings. Dozens of crayon sketches pinned to the walls. All of the same thing, a dark shape in the woods. Sometimes it had eyes, Sometimes it wore a smile, and always, always, it hovered behind a crib. Something creaked upstairs. He lifted his gun and stepped toward the staircase. Clear left, he whispered instinctively. Clear right. Bishop stayed rooted to the door. Come on, boy. But the dog whined and refused. Callum ascended alone, each stair groaning under his weight. At the top, a single hallway. At the end, a nursery door. Half open, he stepped inside. The walls were blue, the ceiling painted with stars. Dust hung thick in the air. And there in the center was another crib, this one old. Real, not rotting, not covered in ivy. Inside it, a photograph of a man holding a baby, freshly printed, not yellowed, not aged. Callum stepped closer, picked it up with a shaking hand. The man was him, and the baby the same one from the woods. His fingers curled around the photo, his breath shallow. Another sound creaked behind him. He turned, too slow. A figure stood in the doorway. Didn't think you'd actually find it, the man said. Callum recognized the voice. Deputy Ray Halvorson, his old partner, the one who'd gone missing 2 years ago. Ray looked different. Thin, pale, like something had fed on him. Ray? What the hell? I tried to burn it. The crib. I thought that would end it. Ray muttered, stepping into the room. But it always comes back. It wants someone. A baby. If not that, then someone who looks into it. Callum backed away, gun half raised. You been out here since? You brought the dog, Ray said, nodding to the stairwell. That's bad. Why? It doesn't like dogs. They remember. A sound rose from downstairs. A dragging, slithering sound. Then Bishop barked once, then fell silent. Callum lunged toward the door, but Ray blocked him. You'll bring it back to town. You'll feed it by accident. That's how it grows, Ray said, his voice cracking. You should have let the call go. Callum shoved past him and bolted down the stairs. The cabin door was wide open, rain pouring in, but Bishop was gone. Only muddy paw prints let out, then vanished mid-stride. Callum stood on the porch, breathing hard, staring into the woods that suddenly felt colder than any place he'd ever known. And from behind him, upstairs, the baby cried again. The cry from upstairs cut sharp through the rain, like a blade drawn in the dark. Callum didn't move. He couldn't, not at first. Behind him, the crib creaked gently, as if someone unseen had leaned over it again. Upstairs, still calling. But Bishop was gone, his partner, his anchor, and Ray. Ray was dead, or worse. Callum wiped the rain from his brow and turned back toward the doorway. His pulse roared in his ears. He had to get to Bishop, had to find the baby, had to get the hell out of those woods and back to town before whatever this was followed him out. His fingers brushed his radio. Dispatch, this is Officer Ridge. Static, nothing but static. He backed away, down the warped porch steps, flashlight trembling in his grip. As he swept it over the clearing, he caught a faint glint metal, half buried in the wet ground. He knelt, brushed aside the leaves, and unearthed an old sheriff's badge. Not his, not Ray's. Sheriff Vernon Ridge. His father. He stared at it, throat closing. Vernon Ridge had vanished in 1993. Everyone said he'd walked into the woods and never come back. Callum had been 8 years old. He rose slowly, the badge heavy in his hand. A tightness gripped his ribs, grief twisted with rage. All these years, and no one ever found a trace. Now it was lying outside a ghost cabin, under the wet pine needles, like it had been waiting for him. A voice, half memory and half hallucination, echoed in his skull. The woods don't forget, son. Don't go in unless you're ready to see what they remember. He pocketed the badge and turned toward the trail. The fog had thickened, but Bishop's prints, muddy and broken, led north toward the ravine near Miller's Creek. He followed. The deeper he went, the more time unraveled. The trees leaned wrong. The sky looked older. Time stretched between steps, until even his breath felt borrowed. Then the smell hit him. Decay. Sweet and wrong. He reached the creek, and his light swept across a ravaged scene. A makeshift camp. Old blankets, a rusted pan, empty bottles, and a torn photograph fluttering in the wet grass. He picked it up. 4 children, all under 10, smiling. A name scribbled in faded ink. The Donnelly kids, July 87. All of them had gone missing that year. All from Ashburn. He flipped the photo, and there, scrawled in a trembling adult hand, the crib takes, the woods keep, the dog knows. A soft whimper sounded ahead. Bishop, Callum ran, crashing through brush, breath tearing from his lungs. He broke into another clearing, flat, surrounded by ash trees. There, lying beside a toppled stone marker, was Bishop, still breathing. Barely. His fur was slicked with blood, deep gashes across his flank. But his eyes met Callum's. He tried to rise. "Stay down, buddy," Callum whispered, dropping to his knees. "I've got you." He ripped his jacket, pressed at the wound, and then he heard it, a lullaby, humming, a woman's voice. Close. He stood, flashlight raised. In the far corner of the clearing stood a woman in a white nightgown, her back to him, cradling something. "Ma'am," he called, "you need help?" She didn't turn. The humming stopped. Then she whispered, so softly he almost didn't hear. It cried so long, I had to quiet it. Callum stepped closer. Inch by inch, mud squelching underfoot. "What did you say?" Her head tilted at a strange angle, almost curious. They always cry, but not after. He took another step. "What are you holding?" Her arms uncurled. "Nothing." The bundle was empty. She turned, and her face was hollow, wrong, rotted like waterlogged wood. Her eyes were black as tar. Callum staggered back, but she didn't follow. She only said, "You brought the dog. You brought yourself. Now it wakes again." Then she vanished. No footsteps. No wind. Just gone. The woods were silent. He grabbed Bishop's harness and began dragging him back toward the fire trail. Every step an effort against whatever lay behind them, whatever watched from the trees. As he moved, he saw it again, something flickering between the trunks. Not quite human. Long crawling. Something made of shadow and antlers. By the time they reached the cruiser, Bishop was unconscious. Callum didn't wait. He loaded the dog in the back seat, slammed the door, and peeled out onto the road, tires spinning mud. The baby, the woman, the badge. Ray. He didn't know what to believe anymore, but he knew what he had to do. Ashburn's town limits appeared like a lifeline through the windshield. He pulled into the sheriff's department lot, headlights cutting through fog. The building was dark, quiet, too quiet. Callum rushed inside, carrying Bishop. Deputy Eliza Kent, the night officer, looked up from her desk, stunned. "What the hell?" "Call the vet. Get Bishop help now. Then pull every missing person's file going back 70 years. She froze. "What happened?" He met her eyes. They were taken. All of them. The Wellingtons. My father. Those kids. They were taken by whatever's out in those woods. And we just woke it up again. Eliza's face went pale. "That's impossible." Callum dropped the badge on the desk, then explained that. She picked it up, her hands trembling. "No one ever found this," she whispered. "We looked for months." Callum nodded slowly. "Something's feeding. Something old. I think my dad knew. I think maybe he tried to stop it." Eliza looked at him hard, eyes narrowing. Then she said something he hadn't expected. "I think you need to see something. Now." She led him downstairs into the records archive. At the far end, in a drawer marked Cold Cases 1950 to 1990, she pulled out a file. Yellowed. Stiff. She opened it, revealing crime scene photos, black and white, blurred by age. One showed a crib, in the middle of the woods. Another showed a baby, or what looked like one, but its face was scratched out, even on the negative, written in marker across the top of the folder. "Do not reopen. Sealed by Sheriff V. Ridge." Callum stared at it. His father had known, had hidden it, had tried to bury it. You think this thing's coming back? Eliza asked. Callum nodded. No, it never left. That night, he went home and pulled out the only box his father's things he'd ever kept. Inside, buried under medals and news clippings, was a worn leather journal. His hands shook as he opened it. Scrawled across the inside cover, "If the crib appears, don't look inside. If the baby cries, don't answer it. If the dog barks, run." And below that, "I buried it once, but it always comes back." Callum closed the book. Outside, the night was still, but in the trees beyond the window, something moved. And far off, just faint enough to question if it was real, a baby cried. Ashburn woke up to fog and fear. By morning, Bishop was stable but sedated at the town vet. The sheriff's department was sealed tight. Callum sat alone in his office, the leather journal open on the desk, coffee going cold beside it. He'd read the final entries twice already. Now he read them again. July 3rd, 1993. The woods don't take. The woods keep. The baby isn't a baby. It's a door. July 5th. Ray Halvorson's uncle says it cried again. Same place. I'm going out there tonight. If I don't come back, seal the file. Burn the crib. Vernon Ridge. A knock snapped him back. Eliza stepped in, pale from a night with no sleep. "I cross-checked all the missing cases," she said. 87 since 1950. 27 of them were infants under 2. All went missing near Devil's Hollow or Miller's Creek. We never connected the dots before. Callum pushed a photo across the desk. The woman in the white nightgown, the one he saw near the ravine. Her name's Maureen Donnelly. Missing since 87. She took her baby brother camping and was never found. I think it uses them, somehow, holds them there. Eliza's lips thinned, like it's feeding off loss. "No," Callum said. "Grief's just a bait." By dusk, Callum was back at the trailhead off Devil's Hollow. He stood in the same place where it all began, staring down the same narrow path, Bishop's blood still staining the moss nearby. Only this time, he wasn't alone. Eliza stood beside him, shotgun slung over her shoulder. "You don't need to come," he said. "Don't flatter yourself," she replied. "I want to put a bullet in whatever's been haunting this town since before I was born." Callum almost smiled. Almost. They entered the woods together. The forest closed in fast, thicker, darker, angrier than before. The trees seemed to lean harder. The fog didn't roll. It clung. After a mile, they found it. The crib, back in the clearing. Rebuilt. Whole. Fresh paint. No rot. Eliza inhaled sharply. Callum stepped closer. Inside, swaddled in pale blue, was the baby again. Same eyes. Same skin. Same frozen, soulless face. "I think it wants you to take it," Eliza said quietly. Callum nodded. "That's the trap." He reached into his coat and pulled out a silver canister, an evidence tin from the 87 Donnelly case. Inside it, wrapped in a scrap of torn sheet, was a small, charred object, the pacifier they recovered in the Donnelly woods. He dropped it into the crib. The wind stopped. The forest held its breath. And then the baby blinked. It smiled. From behind them, the trees screamed. The sound wasn't wind. It was voices, hundreds, howling, sobbing, pleading. The sound of forgotten. The stolen. The children. Callum spun. The trees began to move. Roots snaked toward the clearing. Bark split. Faces appeared, gray, sunken, eyes wide with anguish. Arms reached from trunks, clawing at nothing. Eliza raised her shotgun. "Behind you!" she shouted. Callum turned. The baby was gone again. In its place was a figure. Small, pale, hollow-eyed. His father. Sheriff Vernon Ridge stood inside the crib, uniform torn and stained with soil and time. "Dad," Callum choked. Vernon raised a trembling hand. "Don't trust it," he rasped. "What is it?" "A door," Vernon said, "to where it takes them." And then Vernon shattered, his body splitting apart into ash and wind, swept upward into the trees like smoke. Eliza screamed. A tendril of black mist shot from the crib toward her face. Callum tackled her just in time. They rolled through the dirt as the clearing exploded in a soundless burst of pressure. Every tree bent backward. Then, silence. When Callum opened his eyes, the crib was gone. Only a pit remained. Circular. Perfect. Dug deep into the earth like something crawled out. At the bottom, something glinted. He climbed down and retrieved it. It was a toy rattle. Glass. Inside it, 3 baby teeth. Eliza stared down at him from the edge. "I think it's been birthing something all along," she whispered. They torched the clearing. Gasoline. Flares. Everything. The fire burned too fast, too hot, unnatural. The trees screamed again as they fell. By the time they made it back to the cruiser, dawn was breaking. Ash fell from the sky like snow. Back in Ashburn, the missing persons board looked different. Photos that had been there for decades were suddenly gone. Files erased. Like those people had never existed. But a few new names had appeared. Deputy Ray Halvorson. Maureen Donnelly. Bishop slept beside Callum's desk. His breathing shallow but steady. And on Callum's wall now hung a single item. The burned journal of Sheriff Vernon Ridge. Inside, he had written a new line. "The crib is gone, but the woods are still listening." 1 week later, the town quieted, but Callum didn't. At night, he still heard it. Faint cries that only he could hear. One evening, while locking up the apartment, Eliza stopped beside him. "You didn't tell me what you saw in the pit." Callum didn't look at her. "It wasn't just the teeth," he said. "What then?" He hesitated. There was a footprint. "Human?" "No," he whispered. "Smaller. Hooved. Bare. Like a baby deer." But wrong. She said nothing. He locked the door. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees. And somewhere far off, beyond the edge of Ashburn, past the creek, beyond memory itself, the baby cried again. This time not to be heard, but to warn.